The crash. Jack Carter, a seasoned space explorer, piloted his small starship through an uncharted region of space. The stars outside his cockpit window shimmered like tiny diamonds, and the vastness of the unknown stretched endlessly before him. His mission was simple: map the region and look for signs of new habitable planets. It was supposed to be a routine exploration, but space has a way of surprising even the most experienced travelers. Suddenly, the ship's control panel began to flash red. A loud alarm blared, breaking the peaceful silence. Jack's heart raced as he checked the readings. "What the hell?" he muttered to himself. The ship was being pulled off course by a strange energy field that wasn't on his charts. He tried to override the system, but the controls refused to respond. The ship jolted violently as it entered the mysterious field. Jack gripped the controls tightly, his knuckles turning white. The stars outside the window blurred, replaced by swirling shades of green and purple. His instruments went haywire, and he felt a sharp drop in altitude. Whatever was pulling his ship was dragging it toward a planet below. Through the turbulence, Jack caught a glimpse of the planet's surface. It was unlike anything he had ever seen. The land was covered in glowing plants that radiated soft blue light, and two massive moons hung in the sky like guardians of the strange world. The sight would have been breathtaking if Jack weren't about to crash into it. "Brace for impact," he shouted, even though he was the only one on board. The ship smashed through the planet's atmosphere, flames licking the sides as it plummeted toward the surface. Jack activated the emergency landing system, deploying stabilizers to slow the descent. The ground rushed up to meet him, and with a deafening crash, the ship skidded across a field of glowing grass before coming to a halt near a dense jungle. For a moment, everything was still. The only sounds were the crackling of small fires around the ship and Jack's labored breathing. He unclipped his harness and checked himself for injuries. A few bruises and scratches, but nothing serious. "Well, that could have gone worse," he muttered, wiping sweat from his brow. He grabbed a flashlight and a small survival kit before prying open the ship's hatch. The cool, alien air hit his face as he stepped out. The ground beneath his boots was soft and emitted a faint glow, as if the planet itself was alive. The jungle ahead was dark, with strange sounds echoing from within. Chirps, growls, and what sounded like whispers filled the air, making Jack feel like he was being watched. First priority: assess the damage, Jack said to himself, trying to stay calm. He circled the ship, inspecting the wreckage. The hull was badly damaged, and the engines were completely fried. It was clear he wouldn't be flying out of here anytime soon. The realization hit him hard. He was stranded on an alien world with no way to call for help. As Jack stood there, a low, eerie hum began to resonate from the jungle. He froze, his flashlight pointing toward the trees. The shadows seemed to move, shifting unnaturally. Jack's grip tightened on the flashlight. "Hello? Is someone there?" he called out, his voice firm but tinged with unease. The only response was the sound of leaves rustling. Then, out of the darkness, two faintly glowing eyes appeared. Jack's heart pounded in his chest. The eyes were followed by a figure stepping into the dim light, a tall, humanoid creature with skin that shimmered like liquid silver. It tilted its head, studying Jack with curiosity. Before Jack could react, more figures emerged from the jungle. 3 in total, all female, with similar glowing eyes and shimmering skin. They were unlike any species Jack had encountered before. They spoke to each other in a language he couldn't understand, their voices soft but melodic. Jack raised his hand slowly, trying to show he wasn't a threat. "I don't mean any harm," he said, his voice steady. "I'm just lost." The alien girls exchanged glances, their expressions unreadable. One of them stepped closer, her movements graceful but cautious. She extended a hand toward Jack, as if testing his reaction. Jack hesitated, then reached out, his fingers brushing against hers. Her skin felt cool and smooth, almost like polished stone. Before they could communicate further, a sudden, loud roar echoed through the jungle. The alien girls tensed, their glowing eyes scanning the darkness. Jack felt a chill run down his spine. Whatever made that sound was big, and it was getting closer. The lead alien girl motioned for Jack to follow her. She pointed toward the jungle, then back at him, her meaning clear. Come with us if you want to live. Jack didn't need convincing. Grabbing his survival kit, he followed the strange beings into the jungle, leaving the wreckage of his ship behind. As they disappeared into the glowing trees, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that his crash landing was no accident. Something on this planet had drawn him here, and it wasn't done with him yet. The encounter. Jack followed the alien girls deeper into the glowing jungle, his survival kit slung over his shoulder. The forest was unlike anything he had ever seen, alive with light, sound, and movement. Bioluminescent plants swayed as if they were breathing, and the air shimmered with tiny particles that sparkled like fireflies. The atmosphere felt heavy, almost charged, as if the planet itself was watching his every move. The three alien girls moved silently, their bare feet gliding over the forest floor without a sound. Jack couldn't help but notice how effortlessly they navigated the terrain, stepping over roots and ducking under glowing vines. They whispered to one another in their melodic, unearthly language, occasionally glancing back at him. He felt like an outsider in their world, an uninvited guest who didn't belong. "Where are we going?" Jack asked, his voice cutting through the jungle's ambient hum. Of course, they didn't understand him, but he hoped his tone conveyed curiosity rather than fear. The lead girl, who seemed to be the most confident, turned to face him. Her shimmering silver skin reflected the soft blue glow of the plants around them. She gestured toward the horizon, where the jungle gave way to towering crystal-like structures that pulsed with light. Jack squinted, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. "Is that a city?" he murmured. Before she could respond, a strange sound pierced the air, a low, rhythmic clicking, like giant claws tapping against stone. The girls froze, their glowing eyes darting toward the shadows. Jack's grip tightened on the small knife he had taken from his survival kit. The sound grew louder, closer, until a monstrous creature emerged from the underbrush. The beast was enormous, standing at least 10 feet tall on 4 muscular legs. Its body was covered in dark, chitinous armor that gleamed under the jungle's light. Multiple eyes, red and unblinking, fixed on the group. Its jagged mandibles clicked menacingly, and a long tail with sharp spines swayed behind it like a whip. Jack's instincts screamed at him to run, but the girls didn't move. Instead, the lead girl raised her hand, and the air around her seemed to vibrate. The glowing plants nearby responded, their light intensifying as if feeding her power. Jack watched in stunned silence as the vines around them began to writhe and twist, creating a barrier between the group and the beast. The creature let out a deafening roar and charge, slamming into the barrier with incredible force. The vines held strong, but cracks began to form in their glowing surface. The other 2 girls joined in, their hands outstretched as they chanted in their strange language. The ground beneath the creature erupted with glowing roots that wrapped around its legs, holding it in place. Jack realized they couldn't keep this up forever. The beast was too strong, and the girls were already starting to show signs of exhaustion. Without thinking, Jack pulled a flare gun from his survival kit. He aimed at the creature's face and fired. The flare hit its mark, exploding in a burst of red light. The beast screeched in pain, its sensitive eyes blinded by the sudden brightness. "Move! Now!" Jack shouted, motioning for the girls to follow him. The lead girl hesitated for a moment before nodding. The group sprinted through the jungle, the beast's enraged roars echoing behind them. Jack's heart pounded as they weaved between trees and leaped over glowing roots. He could feel the vibrations of the creature's pursuit, but they didn't stop. Finally, they reached a clearing where a massive, glowing tree stood. Its trunk was wide enough to house a small building, and its branches stretched high into the sky, emitting a soft, golden light. The lead girl motioned for Jack to climb a set of natural steps carved into the tree's base. Without hesitation, he followed her, the other two girls close behind. Inside, the tree's hollow interior revealed a small, hidden sanctuary. The walls were lined with glowing crystals that bathed the space in a warm light. Strange, floating orbs hovered in the air, their purpose unclear. Jack collapsed onto the ground, catching his breath. "What the hell was that thing?" he asked, his voice trembling. The lead girl knelt beside him and placed a hand on his chest. Her touch was cool and calming, and Jack felt his racing heart begin to steady. She pointed to herself and said, "Zaya," then gestured to the other two girls. "Lyra, Anya." Jack nodded, repeating their names. "Zia, Lyra, Anya. Got it." He tapped his chest. "Jack." Zaya smiled faintly and nodded. Then she pointed to the glowing marks on his arm, the ones he had noticed earlier. She spoke a single word, "Chosen." Jack frowned. Chosen for what? Before she could answer, a faint mechanical hum filled the air. Jack's stomach sank as he realized it wasn't coming from the jungle. It was coming from above. The girls exchanged worried glances, and Zia motioned for silence. Jack peered through a small opening in the tree and saw something that made his blood run cold. Several metallic drones were scanning the jungle, their bright searchlights slicing through the darkness. Whatever brought him to this planet wasn't done with him yet. The threat. The hum of the mechanical drones grew louder, their searchlights sweeping through the jungle like giant glowing eyes. Jack crouched low inside the hollow tree, his breathing shallow as he tried to make sense of what was happening. Zia, the lead alien girl, motioned for him to stay quiet, her glowing silver skin dimming as if she were trying to blend into the shadows. Lyra and Anya huddled nearby, their expressions tense but resolute. From his position, Jack could see the drones, sleek, metallic spheres with sharp edges that glinted under the alien moonlight. They moved in perfect formation, scanning the jungle floor with beams of light. Occasionally, one would release a sharp burst of sound, like a sonar pulse. Whatever these machines were looking for, they were systematic and relentless. "Those things aren't natural," Jack whispered, his voice barely audible. Zaya glanced at him and nodded. Her glowing eyes met his, and for the first time, Jack noticed something in her expression. Fear mixed with defiance. She gestured to the glowing marks on his arm, then pointed to the drones outside. Jack didn't need to understand her language to get the message. "They're here because of me." Jack's mind raced. He had crash-landed on this planet less than a day ago. He had no idea who, or what, was hunting him, but he wasn't about to let these girls, who had already saved his life, get caught in the crossfire. The hum of the drones grew louder, and then, without warning, one of them stopped midair. It hovered above the clearing outside the tree, its bright light focused on the ground. A sharp, mechanical voice echoed through the jungle, speaking in a language Jack didn't recognize. The sound sent a chill down his spine. "What's it saying?" he asked, glancing at Zia. She didn't answer. Instead, she raised her hand, and the air around them seemed to shift. The glowing orbs inside the tree dimmed, and the faint golden light faded into near darkness. It was as if the tree itself was responding to her command, shielding them from detection. The drone hovered for a moment longer, its light scanning the area. Then, with a sharp mechanical click, it turned and rejoined the others. Jack exhaled a breath he didn't realize he had been holding. "We're not safe here," he muttered. "They'll be back." Zia nodded and motioned for them to move. She led the group to the back of the hollow tree, where a narrow passage opened into an underground tunnel. The walls glowed faintly, lined with the same bioluminescent crystals that seemed to power much of this strange world. As they descended, Jack couldn't help but ask, "Where does this lead?" Zaya glanced over her shoulder and said a single word, "Sanctuary." Jack's brow furrowed. Sanctuary sounded promising, but he had learned enough about alien worlds to know that nothing was ever as simple as it seemed. The tunnel twisted and turned, leading them deeper into the planet's core. The air grew warmer, and the crystal's glow brightened, casting eerie shadows on the walls. Jack noticed intricate carvings etched into the stone, symbols and patterns that looked ancient, almost like a language. "What is this place?" he asked, running his fingers over the carvings. Zaya stopped and looked at him, her expression serious. She placed a hand on the wall and whispered a word that sent a shiver down Jack's spine. "Origin." Before Jack could ask what she meant, the ground beneath their feet trembled. A distant rumble echoed through the tunnel, followed by a faint clicking sound. Jack froze, his hand instinctively reaching for the small knife in his survival kit. "What now?" he muttered. Zaya held up a hand, signaling for silence. The clicking grew louder, accompanied by a low guttural growl. Jack's grip on his knife tightened. He had already faced one terrifying creature on this planet. He wasn't eager to meet another. The tunnel ahead opened into a cavern, its ceiling covered in glowing vines that pulsed with a rhythmic light. In the center of the cavern stood a massive insect-like creature. Its body was armored with thick plates, and its 6 legs ended in razor-sharp claws. Unlike the beast they had encountered earlier, this one didn't seem mindless. Its glowing red eyes scanned the cavern, and its movements were calculated, almost intelligent. "What the hell is that?" Jack whispered. Zia didn't respond. Instead, she stepped forward, raising both hands. The creature stopped and let out a series of sharp clicks. Jack realized with a sinking feeling that it was communicating. Zia exchanged a few clicks of her own, her tone calm but firm. The creature tilted its head, its red eyes narrowing. Then, without warning, it let out a deafening screech in charge. "Move," Jack shouted, grabbing Lyra and Anya and pulling them to the side. Zaya stood her ground, her hands glowing with an intense blue light. The ground beneath the creature erupted, massive roots shooting up to block its path. Jack scrambled to his feet, his mind racing. "We can't fight this thing. We need to get out of here." Zaya glanced at him, her expression fierce. She pointed toward a smaller tunnel on the far side of the cavern. Jack didn't need to be told twice. He grabbed Lyra and Anya and made a break for it, Zaya following close behind. The creature roared, smashing through the roots and chasing after them. The tunnel narrowed, forcing them to run single file. The sound of the creature's claws scraping against the stone walls grew louder with each passing second. Jack's legs burned as he pushed himself to keep running. Finally, they burst into another open space, this one filled with a strange, glowing pool of liquid. Zia motioned for them to stop. She turned to face the tunnel, her hands glowing brighter than ever. "What are you doing?" Jack shouted. "We have to keep moving." Zia didn't answer. Instead, she raised her hands, and the pool of liquid began to rise, forming a shimmering barrier. The creature burst into the chamber, but as it tried to cross the barrier, it let out a terrible screech. The liquid sizzled against its armored skin, forcing it to retreat. Zia collapsed to her knees, breathing heavily. Jack rushed to her side, his heart pounding. "You okay?" She nodded weakly, her glowing eyes dimming. Lyra and Anya knelt beside her, their expressions filled with concern. Jack looked at the barrier, then at Zia. "You're not just running from these things, are you? You're fighting them. Why?" Zia met his gaze, her voice soft but firm. "Protect." Jack didn't fully understand, but one thing was clear. This planet, these creatures, and the glowing marks on his arm were all connected. And whatever Zia and the others were protecting, it was worth risking their lives for. The bond. The glow of the shimmering liquid barrier reflected softly on the walls of the cavern, casting an otherworldly light on Jack and the alien girls. The creature's distant screeches echoed faintly, but for now, they were safe. Jack leaned against the cavern wall, his mind spinning. The events of the past hours felt like a fever dream. Being stranded on an alien planet, chased by mechanical drones and monstrous beasts, and now finding himself bound to three mysterious alien girls who seemed to know more about his fate than they were letting on. Zia, the leader of the group, was still kneeling beside the barrier, her breathing shallow. Lyra and Anya hovered close to her, their glowing eyes filled with concern. Jack stepped forward, unsure of what to do but wanting to help. "Zia," he said softly, crouching beside her. She looked up at him, her silver skin dimmed and her glowing eyes flickering faintly. He pointed to the glowing marks on his arm, and then to her, his expression questioning. "These marks, you called me chosen. What does that mean?" Zia studied him for a moment, then pressed her hand against his arm, just above the glowing marks. A surge of warmth spread through Jack's body, and his vision blurred for a moment. Suddenly, images flooded his mind, flashes of a massive, pulsating core deep within the planet, surrounded by swirling energy. He saw the alien girls standing around it, their hands raised as if they were guarding it. Then he saw his own ship crashing through the planet's atmosphere, the energy of the core reaching out to him like a beacon. The vision ended as abruptly as it began, leaving Jack gasping for breath. He staggered back, clutching his head. What? What was that? Zia didn't answer in words. Instead, she pointed to the glowing pool that still held the creature at bay, and then to the marks on Jack's arm. Her meaning was clear. He was connected to the planet's energy, just as they were. Jack sank to the ground, trying to process what he had seen. So this planet, it called me here. He looked up at Zia, his expression a mix of awe and frustration. Why me? I'm just an explorer, not some chosen one. Zia tilted her head, her glowing eyes softening. She placed a hand on his chest and said a single word: protect. Jack exhaled slowly, the weight of her words settling on him. He didn't fully understand the connection between himself and this planet, but one thing was clear: the alien girls were risking everything to protect something vital, and now he was part of it. The group rested for a while in the cavern, the warm glow of the crystals providing a brief sense of peace. Jack used the time to dig through his survival kit, pulling out a few protein bars and offering them to the girls. Lyra and Anya accepted cautiously, their expressions curious as they examined the strange food. Zia, still recovering, smiled faintly but waved it away. As they ate, Jack tried to communicate with them. He used gestures and drawings on the cavern floor to ask questions about the planet and the threats they were facing. Lyra, the more playful of the three, seemed to enjoy the interaction, mimicking his gestures and laughing softly when he drew a crude sketch of himself. Anya, the quietest of the group, suddenly pointed to the glowing marks on Jack's arm. She then drew a symbol in the dirt, a swirling pattern that matched the carvings Jack had seen in the tunnels earlier. She tapped the symbol, then pointed to Jack and the girls, her meaning clear. They were all connected. Jack frowned, scratching his head. So these marks, they're like a key, or maybe a bond. Anya nodded, her expression serious. She then pointed to the ceiling of the cavern, her glowing eyes narrowing. Jack followed her gaze and froze. High above, faint red lights moved across the rock. Drones. The machines were still searching for them. "We can't stay here," Jack said, his voice low but urgent. "They'll find us eventually." Zia nodded weakly and motioned for the group to move. She led them deeper into the tunnel system, though her movements were slower than before. Jack noticed her struggling and offered his arm for support. She hesitated for a moment before accepting, leaning on him as they walked. As they ventured deeper, the air grew cooler, and the walls of the tunnel became smoother, as if they had been deliberately carved. Jack spotted more of the ancient symbols etched into the stone, their patterns growing more intricate and frequent. Lyra and Anya ran their hands over the symbols, their expressions reverent. "What is this place?" Jack asked, his voice echoing softly. Zaya stopped and gestured ahead. The tunnel opened into a vast underground chamber, and Jack's jaw dropped at the sight. A massive glowing structure stood in the center, a crystalline tower that pulsed with a steady rhythm, like a heartbeat. The air around it shimmered with energy, and the symbols on Jack's arm glowed brighter in response. This is incredible," Jack whispered, stepping closer. He felt a strange pull toward the tower, as if it were calling to him. Zaya placed a hand on his shoulder, stopping him. She pointed to the tower and then to him, her expression serious. "Protect." Before Jack could respond, a loud rumble shook the chamber. The red lights of the drones appeared in the tunnel behind them, followed by the clicking sound of the massive creature they had escaped earlier. Jack's blood ran cold. They were trapped. Zaya turned to him, her glowing eyes fierce. She pointed to the tower, then to the girls. Jack understood immediately. They would hold off the attackers while he reached the tower. Whatever connection he had to the planet's energy, it was his only chance to help them. "I'm not leaving you behind," Jack said firmly. Zaya shook her head and placed her hand over his glowing marks. Her meaning was clear. This was his destiny. Jack hesitated, then nodded. "All right," he said, gripping his knife tightly. "But I'll come back for you. I promise." With a final glance at the girls, Jack sprinted toward the crystalline tower, the chamber's light growing brighter with each step. Behind him, the sounds of battle erupted. Zia's powerful energy, Lyra's quick movements, and Anya's defensive barriers. Jack's heart pounded as he reached the base of the tower, ready to unlock the mystery of his connection to this alien world, and to protect the ones who had saved him. The enemy. Jack stood at the base of the towering crystalline structure, his chest heaving from the sprint. The tower hummed softly, its glow pulsing in rhythm with the marks on his arm. He could feel its energy calling to him. But behind him, the echoes of the battle were impossible to ignore. The alien girls, Zia, Lyra, and Anya, were fighting for their lives against the relentless drones and the monstrous creature. He clenched his fists, torn between his instinct to fight beside them and the realization that the answer to their survival might lie within the tower. The smooth, glowing surface of the tower was carved with intricate symbols, similar to those Jack had seen in the tunnels. As he approached, his marks glowed brighter, and the tower responded, a section of its surface sliding open to reveal a narrow entrance. The air inside shimmered with energy, and Jack hesitated for only a moment before stepping through. The interior of the tower was unlike anything Jack had ever seen. The walls were alive with light, shifting and flowing like liquid. Strange, translucent orbs floated in the air, each containing swirling patterns of energy. The floor beneath his boots pulsed faintly with every step, and the hum of the structure grew louder the deeper he went. At the center of the room, a massive floating crystal hovered above a pedestal. Its surface was faceted and glowed with a dazzling array of colors. Jack felt a magnetic pull toward it, as if his very soul was being drawn to its power. As he approached, the marks on his arm began to shift, the symbols rearranging themselves into a new pattern. "What is this place?" Jack murmured, his voice swallowed by the hum. The crystal flared brightly in response, and a deep, resonant voice filled the chamber. It wasn't a voice Jack could hear with his ears. It spoke directly to his mind. "You have come, chosen. The time has arrived." Jack stumbled back, startled. "What? Who are you?" he asked, his voice shaking. The voice was calm, almost soothing. "I am the heart of this world. You are the bridge between us and the invaders who seek to destroy what they cannot understand." Jack's mind raced. The drones, the creature, they're part of this invasion. Yes, they are tools of a force that wishes to strip this planet of its essence. You were brought here to awaken the bond and protect this world. The power within you is tied to us, but it must be unlocked. Jack glanced down at his arm, the glowing marks now pulsating in time with the crystal's hum. "How do I unlock it?" The voice grew quieter, almost mournful. sacrifice and choice. You must face the enemy, understand their purpose, and choose what you are willing to give to protect this world. Before Jack could ask more, the tower shuddered violently. The hum faltered, and the light in the chamber flickered. Jack turned to see a drone hovering at the entrance, its searchlight fixed on him. A sharp, metallic voice barked commands, and moments later, 3 more drones entered, their weapons primed. Jack ducked behind the pedestal as the drones opened fire, bolts of energy sizzling through the air. The crystal above him pulsed brighter, and the voice spoke again. Use the bond. Focus. Jack didn't know what that meant, but he didn't have time to hesitate. He raised his hand instinctively, and to his astonishment, the marks on his arm flared with light. A pulse of energy shot from his palm, striking one of the drones and sending it crashing to the ground in a shower of sparks. Holy! Jack muttered, his shock quickly replaced by adrenaline. He focused again, his marks glowing brighter as he directed another pulse toward the remaining drones. The air around him crackled with power, and for the first time, Jack felt like he was in control. Outside the tower, the battle raged on. Zia, Lyra, and Anya fought with everything they had, their combined powers keeping the monstrous creature and the drones at bay. Zia's energy blasts illuminated the dark cavern, while Lyra darted around the enemy with incredible speed, her movements a blur. Anya, the quietest of the group, stood firm, creating shimmering barriers that blocked incoming attacks. But the enemy was relentless. For every drone they destroyed, more seemed to appear, and the creature was becoming increasingly aggressive. Its massive claws tore through the barriers, and its roar shook the cavern walls. We can't hold them much longer. Lyra shouted, her voice filled with desperation. Zia glanced toward the tower, her expression resolute. He will come, she said firmly, though her own strength was fading. Inside the tower, Jack destroyed the last drone with a well-aimed blast, the energy leaving his arm in a crackling wave. The chamber fell silent again, save for the hum of the crystal. He turned back to the floating structure, his chest heaving. All right, he said, stepping closer. If I'm supposed to protect this planet, then show me how. The crystal pulsed once, and a beam of light shot from its core, enveloping Jack. His body froze as a surge of energy coursed through him, flooding his senses with visions. He saw the planet's history, a world teeming with life, protected by the bond between its heart and its chosen guardians. He saw the invaders, a ruthless species bent on draining the planet's life force for their own survival. And he saw himself, standing alongside Zia, Lyra, and Anya, as the last line of defense. When the vision ended, Jack fell to his knees, the weight of the responsibility pressing down on him. But there was no time for doubt. The marks on his arm were now fully activated, glowing with a vibrant energy that filled him with purpose. He stood, determination in his eyes. Let's finish this. The tower's entrance opened, and Jack sprinted back toward the cavern, the energy of the planet coursing through him. The enemy wouldn't know what hit them. The final stand. The cavern trembled as Jack emerged from the crystalline tower, a new energy surging through his veins. The glowing marks on his arms now pulsed like a heartbeat, their patterns shifting and moving as if alive. He felt the connection to the planet more clearly than ever before, its pain, its desperation, and its will to fight back. Every step he took resonated with the ground beneath him, and every breath felt charged with the planet's energy. Ahead, chaos reigned. Zia, Lyra, and Anya were locked in a fierce battle with a monstrous creature and an ever-growing swarm of drones. Zia's glowing hands emitted bursts of blue energy, but her movements were sluggish. She was clearly drained. Lyra darted around the creature, slashing at its legs with sharp, glowing blades that appeared from thin air, while Anya stood firm, maintaining a shimmering barrier that shielded her sisters from the relentless drone fire. Jack tightened his grip on his knife, though it now seemed insignificant compared to the power coursing through him. He called out, his voice booming through the cavern. I'm here. Let's end this. Zaya turned, her glowing eyes widening as she saw him. Relief and hope flickered across her face, but she quickly motioned toward the creature, warning him of the immediate danger. The massive beast roared, its red eyes locking onto Jack. It charged, its spiked tail whipping through the air. Jack didn't flinch. Instead, he raised his hand, and the glowing marks on his arm erupted with light. A pulse of energy shot out, striking the creature in the chest and stopping it mid-charge. The beast screeched, its armor-like hide cracking where the energy had hit. "Not so tough now, are you?" Jack muttered, a faint smirk on his face. The drones shifted their attention to him, their mechanical voices chattering as they analyzed the new threat. They opened fire, bolts of red energy streaking through the air. Jack reacted instinctively, raising his other hand. A translucent barrier formed in front of him, deflecting the shots with ease. The energy felt like an extension of his own will, and for the first time, he realized he wasn't just connected to the planet. He was part of it. Zia, Lyra, and Anya regrouped around Jack, their expressions a mix of awe and determination. Zaya placed a hand on his shoulder, her voice soft but firm. "Together." Jack nodded. Together. The four of them moved as one, their combined energy rippling through the cavern. Jack focused on the drones, sending waves of energy to disable their systems. Zaya and Anya worked together to trap the remaining drones in a glowing net of energy, crushing them with a single command. Lyra, quick as ever, scaled the massive beast, targeting its vulnerable joints with precise strikes. The creature roared in frustration, shaking its massive body to throw Lyra off. Jack saw her fall and reacted without thinking, extending his arm. A tendril of energy shot out, catching her midair and gently lowering her to the ground. "Nice save," Lyra said with a grin, her silver skin shimmering in the cavern's light. Jack smirked, just returning the favor. As the last of the drones fell, the creature let out a deafening roar. Its cracked armor began to glow, and the air around it shimmered with heat. Zaya's eyes widened in alarm. "It's unstable. It will explode." Jack's heart pounded. The energy radiating from the beast was overwhelming, threatening to consume everything in its path. He turned to Zia. "We can't let it destroy the cavern. How do we stop it?" Zaya pointed to Jack's arm, her expression grim. "You, only you." Jack understood immediately. The planet's energy had bonded with him for a reason. He was the only one who could contain the explosion. Taking a deep breath, he stepped forward, ignoring Zoya's protests. The creature's body was glowing brighter now, its roars turning into guttural, pained growls. Jack placed both hands on the ground, focusing on the connection he felt to the planet. The marks on his arms flared with light, and the ground beneath the creature began to shift. Roots erupted from the earth, wrapping around the beast and holding it in place. Jack pushed harder, directing the energy toward the creature. The glowing marks spread from his arms to his chest, then down to his legs, until his entire body radiated with the planet's power. The creature let out one final, ear-splitting roar before its body collapsed inward, consumed by the energy. For a moment, there was silence. Then a shockwave rippled through the cavern, knocking Jack to his knees. The light from his body dimmed, and the glowing marks faded to a faint shimmer. He gasped for breath, his body trembling from the effort. Zia, Lyra, and Anya rushed to his side. Zia knelt beside him, her hands glowing softly as she placed them on his shoulders. "You did it," she said, her voice filled with awe. Jack managed a weak smile. "Yeah, but that was a hell of a first day." The cavern began to settle, the tremors fading into stillness. The crystalline tower glowed softly in the background, its hum now steady and calm. The drones were gone. The creature was defeated, and the immediate threat had been neutralized. But Jack knew this wasn't the end. The invaders wouldn't stop with a single failure. They would return, stronger and more determined. He looked at Zia, Lyra, and Anya, their glowing eyes reflecting a mix of gratitude and determination. "We're not done yet," he said, his voice steady despite his exhaustion. "This planet needs us, and we'll protect it. Together." The girls nodded, their resolve matching his own. The battle was over, but the war for the planet's survival was just beginning, and Jack was ready to fight. Victory and goodbye. The cavern was eerily quiet after the intense battle. The glowing roots that had once held the monstrous creature now lay dormant, their purpose fulfilled. The crystalline tower pulsed gently in the background, its energy stabilizing as if the planet itself was breathing a sigh of relief. Jack sat on the ground, his body aching from the immense power he had channeled. The faint glow of the marks on his arms had dimmed, leaving behind a dull warmth. Zia, Lyra, and Anya stood beside him, their shimmering silver skin glinting softly in the light. They exchanged glances, a silent conversation passing between them. Zia knelt beside Jack, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You are strong, Jack," she said in her soft, melodic voice. "Stronger than we knew." Jack chuckled weakly. "Yeah, well, I'm not sure I want to do that again anytime soon." He rubbed his arms, where the marks seemed to hum faintly, like a memory of the power he had just wielded. Anya, the quietest of the group, stepped forward and gestured toward the tower. She spoke a single word: heart. Jack frowned. The heart of the planet. He glanced at the glowing structure, its steady pulse like a heartbeat. "It's still in danger, isn't it?" Zia nodded solemnly. "The invaders will come again. They will not stop." Jack stood slowly, his legs shaky but steady. "Then we make sure they don't succeed," he said firmly. "This planet isn't just your home now. It's mine too." A difficult choice. The group left the cavern, making their way back through the network of tunnels. The air was heavy with a strange mixture of relief and uncertainty. The immediate threat was gone, but the larger war loomed ahead. As they emerged into the open jungle, Jack was struck once again by the beauty of the planet. The bioluminescent plants swayed gently in the breeze, their glow casting an ethereal light over the landscape. Two massive moons hung in the sky, their light reflecting off the shimmering leaves. For a brief moment, it was peaceful. But Jack knew this peace wouldn't last. The invaders, whoever they were, would return. Their machines and beasts would come for the heart of the planet. And when they did, this fragile world would need defenders. Zia turned to Jack, her expression serious. "You cannot stay," she said, her glowing eyes meeting his. "Your people will come looking for you. They will bring help." Jack hesitated. The thought of leaving felt wrong. This planet, with its strange beauty and powerful energy, had become more than just a crash site. It had become his responsibility. But Zia was right. His ship, though damaged, still held the technology to send a distress signal. If he could get it working, he could call for reinforcements from humanity. "All right," Jack said after a moment. "I'll go. But I'll come back. I swear." Repairing the ship. The journey back to Jack's crashed ship was tense. Though the jungle seemed quiet, Jack couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The girls moved silently, their glowing eyes scanning the shadows for any sign of danger. When they finally reached the wreckage, Jack was relieved to see that the ship's main structure was still intact. The power core was damaged, but not beyond repair. With Zia's help, he scavenged parts from the drones they had defeated in the cavern, using their advanced technology to jury-rig a temporary fix. As Jack worked, Lyra and Anya stood guard, their sharp senses alert for any threats. Despite the tension, there was a sense of unity among them, a bond forged through shared struggle. The farewell. Hours later, Jack's ship roared to life, its engine sputtering but operational. The distress beacon blinked steadily on the console, ready to send a signal into the void of space. Jack turned to the girls, his heart heavy. "I'll call for help. We'll send reinforcements. You won't have to fight alone anymore." Zia stepped forward, her expression calm, but her voice tinged with sadness. "We trust you, Jack, but you are the first to answer the call. Many will not understand." Jack nodded. "Then I'll make them understand." Lyra grinned and gave him a playful shove. "You better come back. I want to see if all humans are as stubborn as you." Anya stepped closer, her glowing eyes soft. She reached out and touched Jack's arm, her fingers brushing the now faint marks. "We will wait," she said simply. Jack swallowed hard, his throat tight. He climbed into the cockpit, his movements heavy with reluctance. As the ship's hatch closed, he looked out at the girls one last time. They stood together, their glowing forms a beacon in the alien jungle. With a deep breath, Jack activated the ship's thrusters. The craft rose slowly into the air, the jungle falling away beneath him. He set the coordinates for the nearest human outpost, his mind racing with thoughts of what lay ahead. A new beginning. As the ship broke through the planet's atmosphere, Jack felt a strange pull in his chest. The marks on his arms glowed faintly, a reminder of the bond he now shared with this world. In the distance, the two moons shone brightly, their light guiding him into the vastness of space. But just as he activated the distress beacon, a voice echoed softly in his mind. It was Zaya's voice, clear and steady. "We are with you, always." Jack smiled, his resolve firm. He wasn't just leaving to save himself. He was leaving to save them, to protect the planet that had given him a purpose. And he would return, stronger and more prepared, to ensure that no invader could ever threaten the heart of this strange and beautiful world again. The stars stretched out before him, and Jack knew this was only the beginning of his story.